On Thursday, the only thing we're doing that day. And then next Tuesday, we'll have a new unit, new lecture notes will be out. I'll try and open up the Canvas stuff today if possible, probably possible, so that if anybody wants to look ahead a little bit, you can see what's coming up next unit. So again, you need a Scantron. It's going to be set up the same way it was before, and we're going to go through it. I'm going to give you a chance to vote on Thursday whether you want to go through it 2 times at 60 and 30 seconds or 1 time at 90 seconds. So think about that. And don't forget to bring a good eraser and number 2 pencil, and please try not to crumple your Scantrons so that I can grade them easily. Now, it generally begins with a discussion of fungi, and at least that's what Unit 2 began with. And remember from that lab that when you see Coprinus, that's a mushroom, and that's in phylum Basidiomycota, and that's the one where I'm either going to point the pointer at the basidium or at the spores hanging off of it and ask you which is it. So you need to know its phylum is Basidiomycota, that its name is Coprinus, and that there's a basidium or basidiospores that I'm going to put the pointer on. Right now, at least last time I looked at it, the pointer was on the basidium, and the spores were hanging off from there. The lichen slide is in this lab, and the one I use is the one I put over there on the microscopes. It's the one with the sort of teal-colored algae, closer to green, and then the rest of the fungus is a different color, pinkish purplish color. So yeah, I'm using the one with the green or teal-green algae in it. And remember that those are algae cells inside, and the fungus cells are around those algae cells. And this is a symbiotic relationship. It's not parasitism, it's mutualism, because both sides benefit. For Rhizopus, remember that when you see the Rhizopus zygosporangium, that is a zygosporangium, that it belongs to Rhizopus, and that Rhizopus is a common name for that, and that Rhizopus is in the phylum Zygomycota for the zygosporangium. Also, there's Peziza. Remember, that's the one with the 8 football-shaped cells in the thin sac called an ascus. So know it's Peziza. Know that those spores inside are the ascospores, and know that that's in phylum Ascomycota. We're also going to have, and yeah, okay, got that. We're going to have it's one of the specimens of lichens, either the fruticose, the foliose, or the crustose growth forms. You'll have to identify which form it is, and that which I've gone over. And of course, know that again, it's a symbiosis, a mutualistic symbiosis between algae and fungi. If you see a mushroom, the purpose of the mushroom is spore production. The mycelium's underground, it grows up a mushroom to drop the spores so they can be pushed away by wind or water from the parent fungus. If you see a morel, it's not a mushroom, but it does the same job as a mushroom. It's spore production. Again, an underground fungus that grows an above ground spore maker to disperse the spores. But if you see any mushroom, remember that those are in Basidiomycota. If you see a morel, remember that that's in Zygomycota. Okay, you're likely to see the yeast slide. You just need to know that's yeast and that that's a unicellular organism. Okay, so next I'll talk about the bryophyte lab. In the bryophyte lab, we had liverwort, and we had on the slides there, we have the liverwort archegonium and the liverwort antheridium. They are the same name, but look a little different than the bryophyte archegonium and antheridium. So you'll need to know which 2 are for the liverwort and which 2 are for the bryophytes. Also, you'll need to know the liverwort sporophyte, that little sac of cells hanging under the sort of umbrella shape. And I've got the pointer on the liverwort sporophyte right now. That's the only diploid part of that plant. Those little sacs hanging underneath, and you can see one of them with the pointer on it, some others nearby. Everything else is a haploid gametophyte, the dominant gametophyte. If you see any liverwort slide, probably won't have a jar or a plastic block specimen, but a slide, you need to know it's in phylum Hepaticophyta. If you see any bryophyte specimen or slide, you'll need to know that that's in phylum Bryophyta. Sorry, any moss, Archegonium, Antheridium, or any specimen, sporophyte, gametophyte, know that they're all in phylum Bryophyta. Okay, and that all of them, liverworts and Bryophyta mosses, are in the informal group known as bryophytes. Now we have the moss in a plastic block, and it's got the gametophyte and then the sporophyte, a single stalk with a sporangium at the tip. I'll put the pointer on, or I'll use a piece of tape and make it into an arrow shape and point that at either the gametophyte, which is the bottom part, or the sporophyte. And you need to know the gametophyte is haploid, it's dominant. The sporophyte is diploid, and it's not dominant, and it makes spores. Okay, that's pretty much it for that lab. Just make sure and know the jars with the red tape on them. Next we had the pteridophyte lab. So this is going to be ferns and lycopods. For the fern fronds, there is ones in plastic over there by the window here, underneath in the picture frame. Those are all fern sporophytes, and are all. Anytime you see any fern specimen, or anytime you see any bryophyte specimen, know it does not have vascular tissue. Know that all the rest of the plants, pteridophytes, gymnosperms, and angiosperms, do have xylem and phloem. They do have vascular tissue. Remember that the fern fronds in the plexiglass have some sori on them. Sorus singular. Probably ask about that. And then there's the fern sorus slide. Know that is what it is. It's the spore maker. The fern gametophyte slide we have there with Archegonium antheridia, just know that that's the fern gametophyte, and it's the thallus we've been talking about. If you see a moss, the more permanent part, as I said, is going to be the haploid generation. Let's see here. Sorry, I missed that was from the previous lab. Getting back to the fern lab, remember there's one with a sporophyte and a gametophyte on the same slide. For any fern specimen, you'll need to know it's in phylum Pterophyta, whisk fern, regular fern, whatever, phylum Pterophyta. For the fern sporophyte slide, there's a gametophyte and then the sporophyte root and shoot system growing off. If I point at the root or the shoot, no, that's a diploid sporophyte. If I point at the other part, oh, that's a haploid gametophyte. It may be upside down in the microscope right now. Whether it's upside down or right side up, the sporophyte still has little embryonic leaves on the shoot system and nothing on the root. So that's how you tell the difference between them. Okay. Okay. Moving on now to the gymnosperm lab. In the gymnosperm lab, we had the cycas leaflet, and it's got the spongy mesophyll and the palisade mesophyll. It's got the epidermal cells, things from this model here. And so on the cycas leaflet, I'll point at probably one of the mesophyll, spongy or palisade, and know that's a cycad. That's the slide. For this model here, which really is more of an angiosperm leaf, but there's a lot of similarities, so we can talk about them both the same way. Know all the parts that I listed in your lab. Upper, lower epidermis, guard cells around the stomata. We've got the vein, the palisade and spongy mesophils, and the air spaces between the spongy mesophils. Okay, there's a pine xylem slide. You should know that those are tracheid cells, because that's all the xylem cells that pine can have. And the tracheid cells are, of course, part of xylem, and that would be in the gymnosperm group. If it's pine, it's got to be a conifer. You have a couple lycopods in jars. Know they're in phylum Lycophyta. Know that they're seedless vascular plants. If you see a male cone, know that that's what that is. There's a couple in the plastic blocks there. And know that that's going to produce microgametophytes, which are pollen. And then if you see a normal looking pine cone, that's an ovulate or seed cone, and that's going to have the megagametophytes inside it. For the ginkgo specimen, just know what the name of the phylum is, Ginkgophyta. For a cycad specimen, know that it's Cycadophyta. If you see any, remember that know which, I gave you a couple of conifers with, I think a spruce or something, and a larch. Know that they're in the group of gymnosperms, and that they're, of course, vascular seed plants. Let's see here. Okay. You should know from a cross-section of the pine leaf which cells are dermal, which are ground tissue cells or mesophils, and which are vascular cells. I think I left the pointer on that slide on the vascular tissue. Okay. For the angiosperm lab, plus anything I might have missed, we only had 2 slides, and you should know the bean pod slide, angiosperm. That's this diagram. Somebody turned this in by mistake. You can grab it back if you want. But know which part's the ovary wall, the ovule wall, and the embryo, like I talked about in the colors. And the pointer right now is probably on the ovary wall. It's probably not a bad place for it to be, considering I know what the question's going to be. I've already mentioned the leaf model. For the flower model, you need to know the anthers, what's made in the anthers, pollen, the carpel, which is going to be stigma style, and ovary, and then the ovary of the embryo sac. Know what that orange thing is, that pollen tube. Definitely know what that is. For the Capsella slide, know that Capsella is in phylum Anthophyta. Angiosperm phylum is Anthophyta. And know that it has 2 cotyledons. It's a eudicot. I'm going to put the pointer on one of the cotyledons or on the embryo and ask you which is which. For the fruit, it's what I said. I'm going to put the pin in the outer layer. That would come from exocarp, the ovary wall layer known as that. And then if it's in the flesh of the fruit, that came from the ovary wall known as the mesocarp. And if the pin is in the pit, that means that it came from the endocarp. That pit grows from the innermost part of the ovary wall, the endocarp. I just don't want to miss anything here, so I'm going kind of slow. Yeah, I don't see anything else here. I've talked about pretty much everything I have in my notes that's going to be on the quiz test. If I didn't say anything about a slide, oh, one more thing. The jars. I'm going to have 1 or 2 of the angiosperm jars on there. Just know that it's an angiosperm and what its name is. And that's it. Just name and phylum for the jars that I got over there. Okay, so that covers everything I could put on the test, and I think I got everything. And if I didn't mention something over there, you're probably safe to ignore it. And if you're really not confident in ignoring something, just come ask me. I can probably throw you some kind of hint. So that's all I have. Come grab your phones and stick around as long as you'd like.